So this video is going to be for exercise 3, right? We've done 2 exercises already. There are small little projects that aren't worth a lot, and they're basically participation based, right? It's the kind of thing that usually takes you 10 minutes to do, and then you're done, you just submit it. So this is for exercise 3. What it is I want to show you guys LOD. And what LOD means is level of detail. You'll see it in a lot of different pipelines, but specifically in video games, right? If you guys have ever played video games, you'll notice that what happens when you go to play video games is sometimes the textures kind of load in when you get closer. The models kind of seem to like pop up resolution a little bit. Particularly in big open world games, you'll sometimes see that where all of a sudden like it looks like something that's kind of a little bit further in the distance, kind of at some point it kind of starts to jump to a different resolution. That's level of detail, because you don't really want to build the whole layer, the whole level, all with the same resolution. It's always better to have more of the higher resolution textures, more polygons on the stuff that's closer to you. And then stuff that's further away is much lower resolution. That way you kind of maximize the performance of the system. So that's what LOD is. Now LOD is quite easy to set up. So this video is going to be like 5 minutes. What we're going to do is we're going to do the clock radio for it, right? So you just open up either my clock radio or your clock radio, whichever one you want is fine, because I know some of you guys are still having an issue accessing some of your files. So the first thing we could do is really talk about the reduction tools in Maya, right? So I can select this object, and in this case, since it's one object, it might just be easier for you guys to use mine, because we know it's already built well. There's no technical issues that might pop up with it. So I'm going to go to the mesh menu in Maya, because we're back in Maya, and you'll see there's a tool called reduce, right? So we're going to go to mesh reduce options box, and you'll see that you can tell it to keep original. In this case, I'm actually going to close this really quick because we can duplicate this, right? So we go to edit, duplicate. That way we have 2 versions of this, right? And in this case, I'll just kind of select the duplicate I just created, right? So that way we're just kind of seeing just one of the copies. That way we're seeing one of them. That way we've got 2 copies. Remember, you can always, just to be on the safe side, duplicate. So that way you have 2 clocks. One that's going to be the normal one, the regular resolution, and one that's reduced polygon count. So now, with just that selected, maybe isolate select on. See how there's 2 objects in outliner, right? Remember, Windows, outliner, that brings this up. But in the mesh menu is reduce. Go to the options box for it. And you'll notice you can tell it to reduce by percentage, by a triangle limit if you want to. In this case, we'll just stick with percentage, and we can say 50%. But most of these defaults are fine. But when you hit reduce, you'll notice it actually reduces that polygon count. Now in this case, I feel like I'm going to push maybe even lower. I'm going to do maybe like 70%, right? And you see how it's actually reducing it? Now one of the things you'll notice though is you see how sometimes it goes too far, right? It kind of starts to break those up a lot, right? So in this case, keep that in mind, right? That might be one of those things where if you're going to reduce it pretty far, like that, maybe that's 70. 70, there we go. You might have to come in and fix a little bit of this, right? So you see how it did a pretty good job of reducing a lot of it, but even there, we can sometimes go back in and maybe go to edge mode, right? Hold down right mouse button, edge mode. And I can always just double click on maybe a few extra edge loops here, like maybe these right here, right? And we can always hit Control Delete to take those out as well. And you see that didn't radically alter the shape at all. So what we could do is we could just kind of come in here a little bit if we wanted to, and just maybe take out a few more of these, Control Delete, just to simplify it even further, right? So it's kind of one of those things. Find the edge loops that you feel are expendable, right? That aren't going to affect the overall triangle count that much, while still keeping a lot of the shape. So in this case, you saw I kind of just took a few extra edge loops out that weren't really affecting anything. In this case, I might want to rebuild this little top part really quick. So I can always just kind of go right back in here really quick, just to kind of, and you guys might not even need to, right? It might not do too bad a job on yours. But I can delete those, right? And I can always just go back in and select an edge, mesh fill hole. And then we could always, grab that face. Oh, not bridge. Extrude. And we can always move this down a little bit, maybe scale in a little bit, extrude, kind of bring that back up, maybe scale in a little bit, there we go. And if need be, and you want all these triangles, we could do one more little extrusion, right? That way it created a little bit more geometry here. And remember, you have edit mesh, merge to center, and that'll just kind of weld that face down to a single vertex. see if maybe we can finally get rid of this one. See if it adds that one though. I don't really want to do that. So in this case, I might just go back in here and kind of maybe just delete that guy, because then it'll be a lot easier to use Control Delete on this one. There we go. Just to simplify it a little bit more. So reduction will usually give you a strong start, but you might still go in and take a few extra edge loops out on your own. Usually the ones that will affect the shape the least radically, and you might need to rebuild this part. So LOD often kind of requires reduction of polygon count, or even you build it lower res and then you smooth it up to give you higher counts. There is the reduction tool. That's why I like showing that, because that way you know there is actually a reduction tool. But you notice it's not perfect, right? On a clock radio, it's not going to be too bad. On a character, I find it's pretty gross, right? It really does not do a terribly good job on a character. But you can always reduce and then do a little bit of your own kind of taking out of some edge loops, right? All right. So now what we have is, if I go to Isolate Select, you'll see that there's the high res version and there is the lower res version. So what we do is we select the higher res first, and then we can shift click the lower res, right? And then we can go to Edit, and you see in the Edit menu, right over in the grouping section, right? We've done ungrouping a bunch this semester, but we actually finally start to really use grouping for Project 5. But right below those is Level of Detail, LOD. And it's really just kind of creating its own unique group with its own properties. And you see right here in the LOD is Create LOD Group. So we can go to Options box for that. And you see we could tell it to use distance, right? And that way it'll kind of use the distance from the camera to load these in. So we'll set up LOD. And you'll now notice there's an actual LOD group in here, right? With these two objects. And you'll notice that the one that we're seeing right now is the high res, but if I zoom out, you see how it switches to the low res? If I zoom in, it switches to the high res. You actually see in the group here, in the outliner here, that what it's really doing is it's created groups with these in them, and it's just controlling the visibility of that group. And so you see how it can actually you can zoom in, and when you get closer to the object, it's the high res version. And when you zoom further out, when it's farther away from the camera, it's the lower resolution version. And that's LOD. And that's all you have to do for exercise 3, right? Maybe just do a quick copy, so you have two versions of that object, right? So edit, duplicate. Then you can go to mesh reduce to give you a good starting point. So it'll kind of drop down that polygon count. And then if you need to, maybe rebuild a small little section, like the buttons will probably get screwed up, so maybe just delete those spaces and just fill a hole and do a little bit of extruding just to kind of recreate a simple version of the buttons. And if you want, you can always kind of take out a few extra edge loops here and there just to kind of drop the resolution down a little more. Remember, that's just Control Delete, double click on an edge, Control Delete to take, that selects the edge loop, Control Delete to take it out. And then we just unhide, right? Turn Isolate Select off so we can see both objects, the low res and the high res. And then we just go to Edit, LOD, right there. And that's the LOD exercise, Exercise 3.